hopefully you've already watched the first tutorial video for this week. If you haven't, I would go back and watch that before you watch this one. So we're starting off here with what should look fairly familiar to you, only I have digitized a few more features. So I've got a few parking lots, I've got a few more streams in there, and a few lakes that I've just quickly digitized. So what I want to show you is, if you'll remember from the beginning of this class, this is all about data, right? We're not just drawing features that look like something, they all have data associated with them. So I want to show you now something that's very core to all of GIS and especially to vector data called the attribute table. So if you look at any of your vector layers, and I'm just going to turn off all the imagery for right now. So let's look at my lakes layer. If I right click that layer and hit open attribute table, it's going to open a table that contains all of the information that we have associated with our vector. So I have 4 lakes, and I've given them each an ID, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I've given them each a name, and in this case, I've just picked random names, and I've given them Kevin, Tina, Joshua, and Big Tim. And that's it for right now. Those are the only attributes that our lakes have. Now, just like if we were editing on the map, I can choose to edit this. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe I thought the lake's name was Kevin, but it's not. So what I'll go do is I'll click on the pencil, and that'll get me into editing mode. And then I can double click in this field and change it. So that field actually wasn't Kevin, it was Margaret. That lake was named Margaret. So I can hit save and toggle off the editing. Sometimes you put in your IDs and you forget which one you were on, and you do 1, 2, 3, 3. I could switch that back to 4, right? I could edit my ID field. But now that I've mapped these, they all have other data that maybe we want to know about them. So for example, with line data, actually we're on lakes right now. So with polygon data, one of the most common things we want to know is what is the area? How much spatial area is covered by my polygon? Well, that's something that QGIS has. It's inherently a part of this lake polygon that I've drawn, but it's not showing up in my attribute table right now. That's because I have to tell it to put it there. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm on editing mode. And then I want you to look up at the top here, and over in this far right piece, you should see something called new field, delete field, organize columns, and then there's this little abacus that says open field calculator. If you click that, it'll open up this thing, and this is basically your way of doing calculations on your objects. So it's a little overwhelming right now, and I don't want you to worry too much about all the different stuff that's available here. But I do want you to know that up in this top left third, you have create a new field, which is what we're going to do. You're going to give your field a name, so I'm going to do area. You're going to tell it what kind of field you're going to make. I'm going to make this a decimal, so that way I can have decimal points. You're going to tell it how precise and how long the field can be. So this is like how many decimal points. We're just going to leave it at default. And then here you're going to type in your expression, and it's just going to give you a preview of what that's going to do. But right now we're just going to ignore that because you can type in a ton of stuff here, and it'll tell you in the bottom like, oh, well, that's not a real mathematical expression. In the middle, you have common. So this makes it easier for you to type your expression by giving you the expressions for common stuff. So for right now, we're going to go to geometry. So we're going to do functions that operate on geometry, e.g. length area. Well, that's perfect. So I'm going to hit the little drop down, and I'm going to scroll down until I see area. But notice there's 2 of them. There's $sign area and area without a $sign. So if you read up on it, it says area without a $sign always uses planimetric in the spatial reference system of this geometry. Differs from the calculations performed by the money sign area function, which will perform ellipsoidal calculations. If you recall from the very first week of this course, we're going to go ahead and use ellipsoidal. Actually, maybe it's not the first week, but the first QGIS week. We're going to use the one that goes ellipsoidal, right? Because we want it to understand that this is on a projected map, and we need to measure it according to the actual shape of the Earth, not as if we're on a flat Earth. So if you click on the $ area, you can either, actually you can't drag it, so double click it. If you double click it, it'll throw that expression over into your expression field. And notice we have a preview. So it's actually going to calculate the $ area of a given feature. Then I'll just hit apply, and boom, it throws that field into the mix. Then I'll just hit OK. Whoops, that's fine. So now I have an area for each of my lakes. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and toggle off the editing, and now that's perfect. With the streams, I'm going to right click, open attribute table. I've given them names as well. So we have question mark, who knows, unsure, and Marcus. I'll hit editing mode. I'll hit field calculator, back to geometry, only this time I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to length. And again, we have normal length and we have $ length. Notice once again, ellipsoidal length versus non-SRS. We're going to go ahead and hit the $ one, double click, and it's calculating a length. Again, I would prefer this to be in decimal, and we'll name it length and hit apply. Great, now we have a length. Shoot, that's fine. Perfect. Now with the points, there's not a lot of geometry data for them because they're just points, but typically we would want to know the X and Y coordinates. So now what I want to show you is how we would take these attributes and turn them into data outside of just our QGIS environment. You may recall I showed you in one of the earlier tutorial videos how to bring a CSV file or an Excel file into QGIS. Well, right now we're going to do the opposite. So I'm going to right click on lakes. I'm going to scroll up to export, save features add, and I'm going to go ahead and go with comma separated value. So that's CSV file, that's that Excel file. I'm going to save it in my lab 5 and I'm going to call it lakes underscore attributes. Make sure I leave it in the proper CRS, the project CRS. And then it's going to give you a bunch of different options here. Most of them you don't have to worry about. Geometry, it says automatic. We're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave persist layer metadata. We're not going to touch any of these layer options. We're not going to touch any of those custom options. And I'm just going to uncheck add save file to map because I don't need the file saved as a CSV as part of my map project. And I'm just going to hit OK. Now, if I click on that, it's going to pull up the file that I just saved. You can also just navigate to the folder you saved it in. And now look, I have an Excel file with my attribute table. If I wanted to, I could also go in here, whoops. I could also go to my attribute table and add the coordinates. So go to my field calculator and, well, let's not do that one. We'll go to geometry. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll get X, Y, Z. So I'm going to go ahead and do this is a bit confusing. This is, since I'm on a polygon, we're going to do X in parentheses geometry, whoops, close parentheses, and actually this needs to be an @ symbol. So X at geometry, and it gives me my X coordinate, and we're going to call this output field X, decimal, and leave all the rest the same. Apply. Now we have an X coordinate. Then I'm going to do y, and I'm going to change this to y at geometry, and I get my y coordinate, hit apply, and then get out of there. And now I have an x and y. And I could do that with all of them. So on the streams, attribute table, x at geometry, say that as x, decimal, and then y, and then the same with my parking lots, x. In this particular case, this is a point feature, so I can just do that. $x, I'll save it as a decimal, $y. Great. And now if I wanted to, right, like let's say I didn't have any of these features, I could do layer, add layer, delimited text layer. This is what we did in that previous tutorial video. I could navigate to, I didn't really save any of them. Go ahead and save one. Export, save features as lakes, attributes. I'm going to overwrite that. Okay, so layer, add layer, delimited text. I could add that attributes file. And now look, it's going to read X, it's going to read Y, it's going to read all of my fields, ID, name, area, X and Y. It's going to read my geometry CRS, and when I hit add, I now have my lakes. Where has it put me? I am somewhere south of Japan in the middle of the ocean. Why did this happen? Let's look at how we did that. Notice the CRS. It's not reading the correct one. This is in 3857. Now hit add again. There you go. So just this goes to show you how important it is to check your CRS when you're working in these projects. When you bring data in, when you export data, make sure that you're always working in the CRS that you think that you are. Notice also that I did not export my shape file. I only exported a CSV, so it doesn't retain the shape of my polygon, but it does retain all of my attributes, right? That's super important. And it just popped a point in the center of the polygon that I drew. And I could do all the same thing with the streams and the parking lots. So that's all I wanted to show for this video, was how we access the attribute table, where the data about our feature is stored, how we can export and import that data, add to it, change it, whatever you want. Okay, so that will be helpful for your lab this week, and that's it for this tutorial.